Hello racing fans, this is NASCAR Racing Fan 2015, back with another paint scheme collab, and I have gotten 3 cars, obviously towards the end of May and the beginning of June, as I got 2 cars in the mail, and obviously I have 1 car showcased in this video from the NASCAR Authentics Wave 2, as obviously the first car is obviously secondary to another driver from the NASCAR Authentics, a bright red paint scheme, really vibrant, and it really is a truly good paint scheme. And the second one is obviously a new sponsor to the same driver, and we've seen this sponsor on another episode of the paint scheme collab, except there's a more green, vibrant car this time, and it was just an absolute must get for me. And the third one is an absolutely hyped up driver. I mean, he had so many bandwagon fans coming into the season after finishing second in the Daytona 500, which has drastically fallen off, but it's still a great paint scheme nonetheless, as we're going to get right into it here on this episode of the Paint Scheme Collab. First off, we have Ryan Newman and his 2018 Grainger Chevrolet Camaro, and honestly, with this paint scheme, it's kind of a disappointment. I mean, I get it. It's the exact same car as 2017. But I don't know. It just felt like the red was a little bit darker. So I thought it was going to be a little bit cooler, a little bit nicer. But yeah, it just feels like the same thing. And honestly, with an NASCAR Authentics Camaro body, it feels like it's a little bit different compared to the other Camaros. With the other ones, we saw, obviously, we have Ryan Newman's Caterpillar and his Cabela, stuff like that. I compared them to those, and it just feels like those cars are a little bit higher. It seemed like they're bigger for some reason. And this one feels like a completely different mold. I don't know, it just feels a little weird, but, I mean, at the same time, what should I have expected? I mean, these cars, yeah, they are a lot cheaper, and, you know, the white interior makes it look a little bit worse, but you know, after that, you know, the Grainger car, can't go wrong with it. Now, this is one of 3 primary sponsors for Newman, as obviously he has Bass Pro Cabela's stepping up this year. He has Caterpillar stepping down. I mean, they went from 22 races to 8 races, and then you have Grainger for 6, and I believe, yeah, they've sponsored ISM. They've sponsored at Texas. I believe they're going to Michigan, or no, not Michigan. We already went there. We're going to Sonoma, and then I think it might be Bristol, and then I think one other race. So, yeah, I mean, I wish we could see this car a lot more. I'm sick and tired of seeing all the, like, Akuma and all those sponsors. It's kind of sad, but whatever. So anyways, the bottom line on this paint scheme, it gets probably a top 10 finish from me. Not the greatest car. Wish they would have added some more maroon. Maybe for next year they'll do that, but can't go wrong with the Grainger car. I'd say maybe get it, maybe not. It depends on your financial situation. It's not a bad car to get, but you know, there's a couple better ones and a couple better paint schemes for Ryan Newman in particular. Speaking of Ryan Newman and better paint schemes, here is Ryan Newman's 2018 Bass Pro Shops Cabela's Chevrolet Camaro. And man, this paint scheme, oh my gosh, it is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, sure, I get on a lot of sponsors like Menards, Exalta, Mobil 1, now Busch if they go ahead with Clint Boyer, Haas Automation, McDonald's, First Data, all these sponsors that have to sponsor 2 drivers at some point. Like, they can't stick with 1 driver. But with Bass Pro Shops, I'm perfectly fine with them because you have Martin Truex Jr. and his Bass Pro car. You know, it has the orange and it's also has 5-hour energy, stuff like that. It's its own unique paint scheme. And then this one as well is absolutely unique, especially with Cabela's. You have the green, the vibrant green. This is an awesome color, and I'm glad to see it on Newman's car. And then you have kind of the yellow and the grayish color. I mean, it kind of reminds me of obviously more of camping and stuff like that because, you know, I think the reason why this one's distinctly different is obviously Cabela's. Cabela's is more of the hunting experts. They have a lot of hunting gear, and I mean, they have one at the St. Louis Mills, but I never bothered to go there. I only went there once in like the last 10 years. And what do you know? Yeah, I didn't even stop there. I went to the NASCAR Speed Park before that closed. That was the only thing I cared about at that joint. But with this paint scheme right here, I mean, it's something that we've never seen before. I really like the colors, and you know, 2018, I mean, the season's been absolutely terrible, but there have been some absolutely phenomenal paint schemes that have shown up on the racetrack, and this is one of them. This is one of the better paint schemes of 2018. As obviously, if I'm going to give this car a rating, I'm going to give it a top 5 finish. The die cast is phenomenal. The paint scheme is phenomenal. I would definitely get it over, obviously, the Caterpillar and the Granger car, which I got both of them, and as well as the Liberty National and the Patriotic car that's coming out. Definitely get this one. And finally, we have Bubba Bandwagon Wallace Jr.'s Handshake Away Click and Close Chevrolet Camaro that ran in the Daytona 500 and then ISM and Texas. So obviously, Bubba Wallace entered the season with very little sponsorship, and Click and Close didn't want to commit that much. So Richard Petty had a handshake deal with them for 3 races, and Bubba Wallace ended up doing some good for Click and Close and Richard Petty Motorsports, as they got a 2nd place finish in the Daytona 500. And so many bandwagon fans, so many people jumped on to Bubba Wallace. And guess what? Richard Petty has rewarded them, and Bubba Wallace, they've rewarded their fans with absolutely doing nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, Bubba Wallace, he's a good driver. It just, the thing is, the absolute thing about Bubba Wallace is Richard Petty just doesn't care anymore. If you look at it, Richard Petty Motorsports the last couple years, I go over this time and time again. They always, every sponsor, driver, everyone gets a better deal elsewhere. Let's look at like Casey Kane when he left. Budweiser. When Budweiser left, they went ahead with Kevin Harvick and won the championship a couple of years later. You have Stanley Tools. Look at them. They're now on Eric Jones and Daniel Suarez, and they're actually getting a decent amount of TV time. Let's look at Best Buy. They left for Matt Kenseth. First race, they win the Daytona 500. AJ Allmendinger left, and look at him. He's on JTG Doherty Racing developing. I mean, he just made the All-Star race a while back. He's shown he has some talent. Oh yeah, won a race back in 2014. And many other scenarios where Richard Petty's just a terrible owner. And yeah, with Bubba Wallace, Click and Close, I like the purple colors. Now don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic car. But honestly, I think Click and Close and Bubba Wallace should probably try to leave after this season. So if I gave this car a rating, I'm going to give it a top 5 finish. I don't know how much longer Richard Petty Motorsports is going to be. They're about a handshake away from death. They constantly have to go on social media and try to campaign for sponsors like Twitch. They had a picture of like their hauler saying, "Oh, you could be next." I mean, it's just stupid. Oh my gosh. And just to think they could have avoided this whole thing had they signed that contract with Smithfield. You know, they would have had the 43 car with Eric Almirola, and then they would have had the 44 car and with Bubba Wallace. But basically now they're starting from scratch, and I'm sick and tired of Richard Petty's reputation that's kind of up on the race team. Now the driver, Richard Petty's fine, but it's just everyone praises him, it seems like, or thinks he's fine as a team owner, when he's not that good. I think it's time for him to go. I think it's time to shift the ownership to someone else. Create a bigger alliance with RCR and Chevrolet. Maybe they can try to create an alliance with Hendrick if they can get really smart people to work behind the scenes. But with Richard Petty, he won't care. He probably won't care for a while. And I would expect Bubba to have more mediocre results. I mean, that's just my honest opinion. I don't see much progress with the team. So don't Don't dislike this video if you're a Bubba fan. I feel bad for Bubba. He deserves better equipment. He's miles better than Danica Patrick, but he needs, like I said, he needs a better team. Richard Petty Motorsports just isn't giving him what he needs. But, I mean, technically that was an overdrawn NASCAR View episode. Let's get back onto the paint schemes. Best car, obviously the Ryan Newman Bass Pro Cabela's. I just like the colors of this car. It's something unique, something different, and it's a really pleasant surprise to see on the track. Second would obviously Bubba Wallace and his Click and Close car. That car is fantastic. I recommend you get that car. It is really, really nice. One of the better paint schemes I've seen this year. And then obviously the Ryan Newman Granger. I mean, it's a good car, but no, it could be better. So obviously, that does it for this video. Next weekend for the paint scheme collab, we'll go on to a different type of series. I mean, it has nothing to do with the Cup Series, but we'll see where that gets us.